We're looking at fantasy football now. And who are some players that you're not leaving your drafts without? Steve, I'll start with you on this one.
Right off the bat, I'll go with Brock Bowers. I love having the value of the best tight end because I feel like that's a position, while less so than other years, there's just a big drop off. There's only going to be, maybe 4 or 5 max really good tight ends. And I think he's going to be the best one. And as these guys said earlier in the podcast, Geno Smith is now his quarterback, way better than Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. So I think Brock Bowers, 100%. I'm getting him in the first round unless I have like a top 2 pick.
My dynasty team is really happy about that, Steve. I'm hoping for the same thing. I traded a lot to get him in the draft last year, and I was very happy with the early returns. But yeah, he's going to be the focal point of that passing game again, and rightly so. And Geno's going to elevate his ability. He's not going to have to work as hard to get those numbers, I guess, this year. And I agree with you from a fantasy standpoint too. It's him, it's Trey McBride. I mean, even Sam Laporta, now he doesn't have Ben Johnson, and how's that going to impact his value? I do think there's a huge drop-off after those first few tight ends, and I think he's the best one, and he's the youngest somehow too, so it's just everything's setting up for him to have a big year. Hope he stays healthy, and again, my dynasty team will be very happy about it.
Trey McBride is the guy you want if your league is heavy on receptions and doesn't care about touchdowns.
Just curious, why do you think tight end value dropped off so hard over the last couple of years, in terms of using them as offensive weapons?
I think, first of all, it's hard to find guys with those skill sets. Those are only so many human beings on the planet who can do the things at that position that it requires. And part of this, and I'm sure Doug can speak to this better than I can, it's guys like George Kittle who don't just create matchup problems down the field, but they will whoop your ass in the blocking game, like in the run game. And what that does for your offensive coordinator is so important because it means that I can put you anywhere and I'm not telling the defense what we're doing. Because if you can't block and I put you in a formation or an alignment that makes it seem like you're going to, they know we're full of crap. They know already I'm not running the ball here. I'm running play action. I'm motioning out of this. I'm shifting out of this because they know damn well that whoever that tight end is can't block in line and can't handle the defensive end and set the edge. So they're going to do something else with this play. So when you have guys like Bowers, who obviously in that Georgia offense, you're no block, no rock if you're playing for the Georgia Bulldogs. And again, George Kittle is a prime example, really, if you played anybody at Iowa as well. If you can do everything really well as a tight end and still be a dynamic playmaker down the field and create matchup problems, those guys are so hard to find, man. And that's why there's only a few that do it super, super well, because most teams, that's why they're in a lot of multi-tight end sets, because you have to have another guy who can just block really well. If you focused on the guy who can catch really well, you got to have those differing skill sets. It's really hard to find guys who have the size and the skill set to do it all at an elite level like those couple of guys.
And I think, with Bowers, with McBride, with Laporta, you're getting these young tight ends coming into the league with a lot of production value. It's just, it hasn't happened year after year like with Kelsey and Kittle and those other guys. And, Kittle's still at about his peak. Kelsey is not. It's just, the attrition has finally taken hold. His, all his per catch numbers are just not anywhere near what they used to be, and that it happens. Now he's the master of the whip route, whereas it used to be the seam route. Now it's 5 yards and out, 5 yards and out. That's what it's it's Devo. It's whip it good left, whip it good right. That's the whole offense now. But I think overall you're getting a next wave of tight end production value that's coming and will expand itself in 2025. It just hasn't happened year after year yet.
Doug, why don't you give us your 2 players you are targeting in your fantasy drafts?
I'm going to start with receiver Egbuka from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and let's start with the fact that Chris Godwin, injury-wise, we're still wondering. Jalen McMillan looks like he's going to miss about half the season with a neck issue. I know that Baker Mayfield has said, post Liam Cohen, he wants them to push the ball down the field more, which, if so, is good news for Mike Evans. But there's a reason they got Egbuka in the first round when they already were, quote-unquote, loaded at receiver. And now you're finding out why, because they're going to have to throw the ball to someone besides Evans and Cade Otton. Red zone master Cade Otton to us. And Egbuka just comes in with that kind of the Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Cooper Kupp slot outside. It's immediate. We've already seen it in the preseason. And certainly with a new staff, with Liam Cohen gone, they may push it down the field a little bit more. It's not really the functional construct of their offense, so they're going to need those intermediate experts. And Egbuka is that from day one. And especially if the injury situation continues late into the season, I mean, Egbuka is going to, and he's not a huge, like, contested catch guy, but what he is it's kind of like Kyle Williams of the Patriots, who's another guy I could, when I was thinking of Rookie of the Year, I was almost going there. These guys who just understand how to find voids in coverage, how to influence a cornerback this way and then go that way. He's got all those little subtleties down so well. Mayfield, it will help to sort of sand off his YOLO tendencies, which we all know he led the league in interceptions last year, as great as he was. I think Egbuka comes in as a natural fit, and he's going to get a ton of production value because of what's happening to their other receivers. The other guy I'll go with is Kyren Williams of the Rams. Speaking of injuries, we don't know whether Matthew Stafford will be good to go all the way through the season. Because you can talk about arm talent. I mean, Stafford's one of the greatest of all time. I would love to see him full go through the whole season, but we just don't know. And Sean McVay is very good at making the best out of but Jimmy Garoppolo is a lot of Stetson Bennett is a lot of I don't care what he did in the preseason.
Yeah.
So Kyren Williams and Sean McVay over the last couple of years has gone from inside-outside zone to gap. Well, most people already know this. And Kyren Williams became his main man-blocking power running back. Last year, they went back to more mostly inside zone. They brought back a little bit of that. And Williams was just as good in that regard. So McVay now knows, whatever I do, this guy can run it. And, he had good production last year. I think they're going to have to be a bit more of a run-heavy team in 2025. And Blake Corum's good, but he's more of a pure gap runner. I think Kyren Williams has proven, and they gave him the contract to, validate it. I think Kyren Williams is now a feature back in an offense where they're just going to have to run the ball more, and those are the guys you want to follow.
Do you not worry about the fumble numbers from last year?
Not per se. Fumble numbers tend to go back and forth.
I think they're definitely going to be a run-heavy team. I think if I'm purely looking at this from a fantasy perspective, I think that Corum's presence and the fact that they spent another fourth-round pick on Jarquez Hunter out of Auburn, who I know they really like, I think it's going to be much more committee than I would like as a fantasy owner if I'm going to have to pay top dollar to have Kyren Williams and assume he's a feature back. I think those other two guys are too young and they spent too much on them. Corum as a third-round pick the year before, to not have them involved enough to where I would just be annoyed with how much they siphon away from Kyren Williams. Emeka Egbuka, obviously, I'm a Bucks guy, and so I'm going to – so many people rake the Bucks for that pick because they're like, oh, you need so many things on defense, and you've already got all these receivers. Why are you doing this? This is why. This is why you do that. This is why you continue to keep a strength, because injuries happen all the time. They obviously probably had an idea with Chris Godwin that he was going to take longer than they wanted to be ready. Obviously, you didn't see anything coming with Jalen McMillan until that injury happened last week. But Egbuka as a player, again, Doug kind of alluded to it. He is Chris Godwin. Like, he is that perfect number two who in that offense, if there was no Mike Evans, he would be the number one because he can line up everywhere. He's tough enough to stay close to the line of scrimmage and block and move all around the offense and catch the ball over the middle. But again, he's never had to be a contested catch guy because he's wide open all the time because he can create so much separation. And when you can do that, he's just such a ready-made pro out of the box. And obviously they've been saying that throughout camp in the offseason in Tampa. But we knew that already last year at Ohio State. Watching him, he could have been a first-round pick the year before. But like everybody else in Columbus, they were too pissed off about the way the season ended. They all went back to win a championship, and they did. And so you're getting an even more experienced, even more polished guy. He's just so ready to make an immediate impact. And again, this is an offense that everybody can look at the fact that Liam Cohen left and went to Jacksonville. Nobody went with him.
No.
The Bucks kept almost everybody else from that staff, promoted Josh Grizzard, who's 35 years old. He was their third down guy last year. He handled the third down offense for Tampa Bay. They were the number one third down offense in the NFL last year. So the scheme is going to stay the same for the most part. There will be some new wrinkles, but they were top 5 in passing and rushing last year. The entire starting lineup is back outside of Godwin and Wirfs to start the season, obviously. But Egbuka's just primed to be that guy that while everybody else is worried about Evans, and rightfully so, he's the guy that's going to eat like Chris Godwin did last year up until that injury. Chris Godwin was the number one wide receiver in fantasy football when he got hurt. He was getting force-fed the ball all the time. Emeka Egbuka is going to play that role until Godwin gets back. And even long-term after that, he'll be that guy into the future.
And that's the thing about the Buccaneers offense, the way it's set up. The quote-unquote number 2 receiver behind Evans is really a 1 or a 1A as far as production, as far as target share. They want 2 guys who are ones in different ways. And that's, I think, with Egbuka, what they'll have. And then when Godwin comes back, God help everybody. That's when it gets really interesting.
I think all this Bucs talk leads us perfectly into Luke's first fantasy option. So, Luke, what do you have?
Yeah, I'll talk about the other side. Again, I just talked about how balanced this offense was last year. And so much of it is because what Liam Cohen really did for this team was elevate the ground game. And he did it scheme-wise with a lot of things that they were finally creative with that they were never creative with under Byron Leftwich and really weren't under Dave Canales for that one season either. Baker Mayfield in the passing game expanded and had a better season. But what Liam Cohen brought to the run game and what Josh Broussard, again, will continue to is just so much more versatility, so much more playing to the strengths of the offensive line and the playmakers that they have. And the guy who exploded right away for fantasy owners last year was Bucky Irving. He went from, okay, he'll be the change of pace guy to Rachaad White, who's the starter, to by the end of the season, he had made Rachaad White take a back seat, and he was the dynamic guy who was on the field as much as possible. Rachaad White still has value on third downs because he's just such a good pass protector. He's such a smart, tough guy that he's such a great blocker and very valuable there. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. But Bucky Irving, I think, and we saw a glimpse of it last week against the Steelers in the preseason game where they motioned him out wide and he ran like a go route for a touchdown. Like Teddy Bridgewater put a dot on him in the back of the end zone. If you're going to be able to manipulate formations to where he's out wide on his own against an inside linebacker, you're toast. And that's what we saw in that preseason game. I think Josh Broussard's going to be super creative with the way they use him. And I think, again, you look at a passing game that's going to have so many weapons. Baker Mayfield coming off a 4,500-yard, 41-touchdown season. And, oh, by the way, they had a top-5 running game. And so all those guys are back. I think Bucky Irving is going to be even better than the version we saw last year, who was already, over 1,000 yards rushing, had a bunch of receiving yards as well. I think he's just such a dynamic player in all 3 downs, especially in PPR leagues. He's going to be one of the most explosive runners on a week-to-week basis, even when everybody's healthy. He's going to be the engine that makes that offense go, and teams are going to have to respect that passing game to where they're never going to be able to load the box up against him. He's always going to have some soft boxes to run into. He's always going to be involved in the screen game, in the passing game, and every time he touches the ball, it feels like it's must-see TV, and he can score on any play. The guy that's a little more under the radar that I think doesn't get enough love pretty much every year since he's entered the league is Josh Downs, the wide receiver from the Colts. And Michael Pittman Jr. has been the number 1 guy there for a while. Obviously, that quarterback situation is hot garbage, and we know that. We know it's going to be a very run-heavy attack. We know Tyler Warren, top 15 pick, is going to be heavily involved in that passing game. But Josh Downs is the guy that always makes it work. Like, he is the guy that always gets open. He does the dirty work, even though he's a smaller guy. He's been banged up a little bit, but he's just such a sharp route runner. He's an explosive guy. He can create big plays. He can get open at every level of the field. And he's been able to do it while already having bad quarterback situations. He's never had a stable quarterback situation with the Colts since he got there. And so he's already proven that that's not going to keep him from putting up numbers. And I think while teams are worried about stopping Jonathan Taylor, they're worried about stopping Pittman and Warren, he's the guy that's going to consistently get the least amount of attention from opposing defenses, and I think he'll have the most room to work. And he's the guy that I think I checked his ADP the other day, and he's like the 50th wide receiver off the board right now in fantasy drafts. If you're looking for value at the position, that's where I look, is the guy that's going to get consistent production that I don't have to spend a high pick for. If he's the 50th receiver off the board, I'm super happy about that value.
I like Downs. There's a guy on the Colts who I actually like better as a fantasy receiver. It's Alec Pierce, who had one of the more good explosive play receivers in the NFL. Had 7 touchdowns to Downs' 5 last year. I like Downs. I like Pierce just because, well, it worked with Anthony Richardson because the one thing Richardson could do last year was throw the ball downfield. That was it.
Right.
Either throw the ball downfield or run and get hurt.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why he frustrated me, honestly, as a dynasty guy. I ended up trading Alec Pierce in my dynasty league about halfway through the season because he was so hit or miss. Like, if he got those deep balls, he could win you a game. or he could not catch a pass. Like he would just completely disappear. And obviously AD Mitchell's there as well, second round pick. I know they have high hopes for. He's still coming along slowly. But Pierce was just so inconsistent and so frustrating that I felt like the floor with Downs was always 10 point. Like you're going to get me double digit points every week. Yeah. Alec Pierce, it would be like 28 points or 4. And I'd be like, oh my God.
Yeah, I'd be afraid to take anyone who's depending on Daniel Jones to get them the ball. But I kind of like your strategy of like Downs might be the one guy maybe getting some shorter passes that Daniel Jones can complete. So, they're going to have to pass the ball.
Somebody's got to catch it.
Someone's got to catch it. Yeah. But that's a scary team.
Yeah.
Right
all the signs lead to Downs. Like all the fantasy statistics of like, his catches per game and all that stuff leads to him being a good fantasy option. But yeah, the quarterback play is questionable.